So good evening or good afternoon, whenever you're watching this. Welcome to another Ask the Leader event with me, Councillor Wayne Fitzgerald. I'm the leader of Peterborough City Council. So we have a number of questions tonight, as usual, and a number of people on screen or online to give us their questions. And we've also got a couple of people that can't be with us. So we will get Amanda Rose, who's from our communications team, to read those out on behalf of the people putting the questions to me tonight. So questions can be made by anybody at any time. Just simply email asktheleader@peterborough.gov.uk and the team will go through them and bring it forward. I'm always willing and happy to answer any questions. So although the first question tonight may have been somewhat superseded by recent press announcements, but I'm sure he'll want to ask the question anyway. So welcome to you all. It's Mr. Harris, Rick Harris, and Mr. David Turnock, who is going to be first. So David, do you want to ask your question?
I will. Thank you very much, Wayne. Yes, as you say, it might have been a little bit superseded, but the question that we were going to put to you as a civic society was, why has the publication of the Embankment Master Plan been delayed? It was due to be published at the end of January, and why hasn't this happened? Are we going to have to wait until after the local elections? Now, I know you made there was an announcement and a story on Peterborough today, Wayne, but no doubt you can give a fuller response as to when we might see the master plan, please.
Sure, happy to. So just a couple of corrections really to the assumptions in your question, and I'll do them quite matter of fact. I don't think it has been delayed. I don't think it was due to be published at the end of January. There was some confusion with the consultants about when they might have a preferred option, but I always knew it to be January/February or early New Year. That's my understanding. And in actual fact, if there is any delay, if you like, David, it was perhaps a couple of weeks because we extended the consultation period back in September, October time, because there was a request from several members of the public who weren't able to get into one of the city centre events, but no particular delay. And so why has it not happened? Well, it simply is not being ready. But what we've managed to establish, and Emma G, who's the officer leading on this work, is on the call as well. So if there's any particular details you want clarifying. So there was growing speculation. And by the way, I've been on holiday, so I was away for 2 weeks. There was no deliberate attempt to not answer. It's just that I thought, well, it'll wait till I come back. So I tried to clarify because of growing speculation and, kind of conspiracy theories about the council is delaying this, or, it's all about election. Nothing to do with that at all. In actual fact, if you want my honest opinion, I would like it out before elections, because I believe that majority of the public are with where I sit, and my personal view about wanting to see a sensitive redevelopment of that space. And I don't think anybody, including yourself or our good friend Mr. Wood, who perhaps raised the question, I'm disappointed he's not on. Not that I don't like seeing you, David, but I was hoping to banter him a bit further. So just to be clear, I did announce last night at the council meeting to stop the speculation and nip it in the bud, as it were, that PERDA begins on the 28th of March, and we're hopeful that by the 25th, which is the Friday, we will be able to release the master plan report that the council have commissioned. So I hope that satisfies your query, but happy to take any follow-ups if you have them.
No, that's great, Wayne. I mean, if we see it before you then go into PERDA, as we call it, for the local election process, that would be good, and everyone can have a jolly good look at it. So that's great. And you're right. My colleague Toby Wood would have been here tonight, but he's giving a lecture about all things civic to another group tonight. So you have to make do with me, I'm afraid, Wayne.
Well, he's no doubt missing a real treat, because I'm sure I'm far more interesting than Toby. That's my opinion. But look, can I also just say to you as well that there will be a great deal of time to reflect on what is in the document. Okay, so we the council, we're not going to rush off and do anything because we will be in PERDA. So there will be ample opportunity once it's in the public domain for yourselves, the civic society, members of the public, other councillors, anybody that's interested, to look what's in the document. And bearing in mind, what's in the document is what the public have said. you know, there is no influence by me or anybody else. In fact, to the contrary, what comes out of this document. I've had an early indication that there may be a couple of options, but only those options are already in the public domain. There's nothing new in there in terms of specific proposals for the embankment, but there'll be a lot of detail behind that as well. So I think there will be time for everybody to reflect upon it. I don't think we're looking for further input, but Emma may want to confirm that, because we've done that stage. We've done that. What we will do is just look at the documents. Does it inform our thinking? Does it aid our master planning process? Should we take one forward for that area? Because just because there is a plan, it doesn't mean to say anything will happen. I'll be perfectly frank as well. I haven't got any money to do anything in terms of making improvements. We would have to seek funding or money from elsewhere, whether that's public realm aspects or anything else. But there's certainly, you know, no chance of us, for example, building an arena. If there was a suggestion of one and somebody wants to bring it forward, it follows the same process as anybody else. Nothing's free. We're not giving anything away. If anybody wanted to do that, that's a matter for them. It's not something we're driving forward. If you know, other options want to come forward also, well then again, it's not likely in the current financial climate that the council could deliver them. It would have to come through the private sector. Emma, do you want to add anything?
No, I think Harper might just be.
Oh, the joys of working from home.
Oh, I know.
Come on, Harper, you can join in, don't worry.
She might be a third generation planner. She probably has some good things to say. I think in terms of the master plan itself, typically this kind of a master plan of this type of scale and complexity would typically take 6 to 9 months. And I think what we started in earnest in September.
Yeah.
Having done the procurement process to find, you know, the most able consultants we could. And I think what we found is that there was such an overwhelming interest on this particularly important asset for the city that we opened up the consultation, we did the events, and actually the deadline passed and people were still, you know, bringing in making observations and wanting to let us know what they thought. So we wanted to be able to make sure that we were covering off all of those. We were giving them all due consideration. And I think just going back to Wayne's point around the master plan, so it's more than just public opinion. The consultants have looked at how the public see the space now, how they might like to see it in future. And they have started from the basis that it is about enhancing that asset for the city. So the green space and enhancing that is a really important part of what they're looking at, to make sure that, you know, you've got really quality accessible green space, which I'm not sure it quite is right now. But also they're looking at planning context. They're looking at what statutory consultees, such as Historic England, are likely to want to see or not see, as well as lots of other ecological, natural environment considerations. So it is a very balanced and nuanced process that has a lot of things feeding into it. So it's not simply the public want X, because that might not necessarily be deliverable in terms of the, you know, the policy frameworks that exist and national guidance, for example. So it is a very balanced process, and that's why we brought in some very experienced consultants to lead on that for us. So I think I'm comfortable that we've given this a really good go. It's been open, it's been very transparent, and I think I'm really looking forward to getting the report myself. And then once it's in with the council, there will be a period of, as Wayne said, consultation within the council and consideration about next steps to see what the master plan, you know, what the status of that might be moving forward, for example. So I was really grateful for how much feedback and how much time people gave the master plan, actually, because it went to show how important it is, but also how many different opinions there are about what they would like to see there across the city. There's lots of different opinions. So yeah, I think the master plan will be very detailed. It's got a lot of background to it, and those elements are all really important in coming up with a kind of a balanced view on what the future of the embankment might look like.
Emma, Wayne, that's great. Thank you very much. And just to sort of finish on this one, so we don't dominate the whole session with this issue, we look forward to sort of getting involved. And actually, I'm sure you'll keep listening to everybody, including the Civic Society. So we look forward to seeing how things can develop. Thank you. Thank you very much to both of you.
I would reiterate, as I told Mr. Ferguson, who came to council last night to talk about the embankment, everybody's view is important. His and everybody else's. You know, we may not agree, or people have specific ideas or specific thoughts. That's natural, and everybody can make their case. I tried to explain to him, I have no more influence than he does when it comes to sitting before a planning committee. You know, so, and you know, David, full well the process. So it is interesting to get the public's view, and as I said, and Emma's just confirmed, there's a lot more detail behind it. You know, there are options and preferences, but it just really needs reflecting upon, and we'll see where it goes from there. It may go nowhere. So I hope that satisfies yourself, other members of the Civic Society, and indeed members of the public, who can ask me any question on any subject they like, and if I can answer it, I will do. So all you have to do, folks, is just email me, email the team, and Amanda will pick up the emails. It's asktheleader@peterborough.gov.uk, and we do this once a month. I think any more would probably be too much for anybody. David, you're welcome to stay online and listen to the rest of the questions. There are only 3 more tonight. It's not a very long session, or indeed you can take your leave.
No,
So,
thank you, Wayne. Super.
Thanks. Okay, so I've got Mr. Rick Harris also on screen in front of us tonight. So he's questioner number 2. If you'd like to ask your question, Mr. Harris, that would be great.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for inviting me to on tonight. Yes, I'm afraid this is another planning question and another one about money. I imagine most questions these days are. This one regards cycling routes across the city. Now, for those that don't follow these things too closely, you mentioned people might be watching this back on YouTube later. There's a plan for that, as one would expect. It's called an LC whip. Yep. Which is about cycling and walking routes in the city. And I have to say, well, the first one I read was in 2019. I was quite excited about it. There was about nearly a dozen routes that were highlighted for investment right across the city. It's a sort of wagon wheel thing across the whole city, which is great. Having said that, 3 years on now into 2022, we haven't perhaps made quite as much progress with those routes as we might have liked, but I'm conscious the current economic climate isn't very favourable. You just announced £12 million worth of savings, and I'm very conscious that I very much doubt anyone comes into public office trying to make service cuts. So I'm very aware of that. That said, I guess my question really is I'm looking for some reassurance that will there be further cuts, and is cycling going to be on the hit list? And I suppose the reason I ask is because I've seen a little bit of, I wouldn't describe them as budget cuts, but I've certainly seen some corner cutting regarding cycle lanes. I'll give you an example which is close to my heart, which is the Oundle Road, one of the busiest roads in the city, of course, which does have a cycle lane on both sides of the road, which a few months ago, there was some resurfacing work on Oundle Road, and a significant portion of that cycle lane, quite a few hundred yards, disappeared overnight. There was no consultation with local people. There was certainly no advance notice it was going to happen. Monday it was there, and Tuesday it was gone. That was back in late summer. I've been inquiring about it ever since because I use that route every day, and it's exactly the same as it was back in summer. I have been speaking to Leanne, who I know is involved in these things, and yeah, she's lots of fine words, but no action, and here we are in March. And it just kind of says to me, well, it's much easier if you want to cut some corners in the budget to just not do any consultation, not put it back. She tells me there's regulations why it can't go back, but certainly there should be some signage as to telling you that it's particularly regular cyclists that your lane isn't there anymore, telling motorists that it's going to reappear in a few hundred yards. That worries me from a safety point of view, particularly because the LC whip does identify that route as the most unsafe route in the city. So those are my concerns. So I guess what I'm looking for you is, I guess, some reassurance. Can you give me any that the cycle routes and the LC whip are not in your sight lines for further cuts?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I will bring in Lewis Banks, who is the man that knows everything about cycling and LC whip and all the active travel stuff. Lewis is your man. But I just, I get often quite often asked about cycling and active travel, and generally on social media I don't respond because it's just not a nice environment in terms of, I'd much rather speak to people face to face. So I generally don't give formal responses on social media because it just leads to a lot of grief. Look, I, as the leader of the council, and I know my colleagues are committed to promoting active travel, okay, and improving active travel access, which includes cycling. But I also have to balance that with as you quite rightly point out, budget constraints, and indeed, there are motorists and there are other users, so it's not all about cycling and walking. There is a balance to be struck. I'm also aware of a desire, in terms of where we are on the climate change agenda and reduction in terms of road use by 15%. I get all that. But what I'm not into is back of fag packet ideas, because they serve a political purpose, like pop-up cycle lanes, which nobody was consulted upon if we're talking about consultation. I'd rather wait and put in permanent solutions that keep motorists happy and keep cyclists safe and happy, and give reasons for people to use cycle lanes more and do more cycling if they feel confident to do so. So that's just a position in terms of where I'm at, and I've made that position clear both as the leader here and also the deputy mayor of the combined authority, following criticism which has been attracted to our commitment to active travel, which is not, social media is not the way to engage with me and others seriously in a confrontational, threatening manner, quite honestly. But as to your specific points, frustration of my wife cycles down every road most days, by the way, so we know exactly what you're talking about, and I live just off Oundle Road myself. But Lewis, do you want to respond in particular to Mr. Harris's points about Oundle Road and others, and also what money we have, what budgets, etc., the scope of perhaps what we're doing on improving active travel and cycling in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Wayne, for that. So shortly, we've got a working group of cross-party working group of councillors that are going to start meeting regularly, specifically looking at walking and cycling. And one of their key tasks really will be to, to fully develop and finalise the LC whip. At which point then we will be going out to public consultation as well, because we're keen to hear, obviously, all users. Have we got the routes right? Have we got, the level of infrastructure and the solutions correct? So to help us with that, with regards to funding, we've just been given some grant funding from the Department for Transport, which is actually revenue funding, which can be helped to develop our LC whip. So obviously, as well as just the lines on the map there, there's also a value for money undertaking, which is a bit of a technical modelling exercise. And there's also obviously highway engineering input needed, with regards to can we fit the infrastructure in on the roads that that where they're most needed. So the great news is, we've got some funding for that, so we can crack on now and get the LC whip finalised. A slight complication, because like you said, it has been in existence in draft form for quite some time, was LTN 120, which is the new national guidance for cycling. And it really is a step change in terms of the guidance there. It's much more the Dutch style of cycle infrastructure, all about protected cycle lanes, with the hard segregation, which is great news, but obviously then that complicates things and does make infrastructure more expensive. But obviously, as part of the government's national agenda on cycling, government has released some quite significant funding for cycling. So at the moment, we've been given some funding to be able to develop a route on Thorpewood, which is exciting, linking Longthorpe to the Thorpewood Business Park to Ferry Meadows and into Bretton as well. We're also designing a route actually along Oundle Road in the area in question. So it will go from the Village Lane junction into Ham Lane, and it'll actually be an off-road segregated cycle route. So that's currently being designed up now, and we'll shortly be looking for funding opportunities there, be it government, obviously with the combined authority, and they're about to go out to public consultation on their new local transport and connectivity plan. So again, putting these excellent cycle schemes in there, gives us, good opportunities, and I think for potential future funding for those. So I think it's, the situation is that, I think the future for us in terms of cycling is looking positive. And like I say, I don't think, touch wood, that we won't be affected by, the council's financial pressures, because most of this funding is grant funding that will be coming either from government or the combined authority.
Well, that's certainly good news, in the sense that if the money's coming from elsewhere, I'm sure we'll all be, I mean, as taxpayers, we're all paying for it, of course, but if it's coming through grant funding. So, Mr. Harris, Rick, do you have any further follow-up questions? Was anything not clear there, or would you like to press me or press Lewis for anything else?
Well, I wouldn't mind asking a bit more about the LC whip, since we've got Lewis here. As we both agree, this certainly, as far as I'm aware, it goes back to 2019, that document. So I have to say, as a resident and cyclist, I wasn't aware that the process for the plan would be going on for 3 years. That's
well,
news to me.
Not to sound offensive, but I wasn't aware we'd come into a COVID-19 pandemic. So a lot of work that would be considered day-to-day by the council, such as this, has been pushed to the back burner, unfortunately, because of, I have to say, most of the staff were redeployed during the height of COVID into other areas of work. So Lewis himself may not have even been working on his day job, as it were. A lot of the team were just put into different areas, and I'm not trying to make an excuse. I'm just being realistic about why a lot of work has been delayed, and I could give you examples all across the council where we're behind on doing policies or strategies and anything else. And I would also say to you that the cycling and walking group was suspended, but Lewis will tell you that at my request about maybe 6 to 8 weeks ago, I asked him to restart that group in order to regain some of the ground that's been lost, in order to take forward that plan, which, as you quite rightly say, has been delayed. And it is unfortunate that it is one of those things that has not come forward because of other things have taken preference. I hope that explains it. And I really am not trying to make excuses. I genuinely, the team have been doing other stuff, and not just in Lewis's team. All officers in the council were directed to other duties.
Right. So, Lewis, do you think that had there not been for COVID, we would have actually seen this plan live now, as opposed to just being a document?
We would have seen it live, but I think we would have then had the added complexity potentially of LTM 120 coming into existence middle to late last year, which would have then probably meant that we'd have probably had to, review the plan and possibly make some changes because of it as well. Because the level of infrastructure now that LTM 120 is saying is not just needed, but is the minimum requirement. It is quite significant, and a lot of, especially the urban routes, there's not a lot of room. By the time the road's quite narrow, footpaths are quite narrow. If there's no verge or anything else, putting in protected cycling infrastructure is going to be tricky. So. I think we would have done it, but we would have now been in a difficult position of having to, review it in light of the new guidance.
Of course, the irony is, Lewis, that it's because of LT 120 that when the resurfacing work on the Oundle Road took place, the cycle lane wasn't returned because it doesn't conform to LT 120. Now, to be honest with you, I really don't think that's what it was designed to do, to effectively remove cycle lanes and not put them back. So it's rather abusing the LT 120, knowing that that was the case, to then just resurface over the top of the cycle lane, knowing that it had no intention or even no ability of putting it back, because it then will contravene the process. Whereas if you'd left it alone, then it would have been fine.
No, I understand that. And it's a difficult position, I think, not just for us, but all councils, because the guidance is relatively new. I think even nationally, there's some question marks around how it's applied. Should it always be applied when you're doing maintenance jobs and resurfacing? But certainly, I think we had a bit of review of it here. And we had some stakeholders as well voice that the cycle lanes shouldn't be put back because they aren't compliant with the regulations. And I think the view that we took was that because we had to make the decision that the no cycle lanes were potentially slightly better than having the what's now deemed substandard cycle lanes.
You said you had cyclists saying they didn't want it back.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Wow.
Oh,
amazing.
By the way, Rick, I have to take him at his word as well. So, like me, I go, oh, really? Right, okay. But Lewis is a professional officer. I'm sure if he says that's the case,
yeah. When I say remove, they said that they were substandard, and that if they were to be put back in, they should be put back in as per LTM 120 standards, and the road simply isn't wide enough to put them back in at that standard. So consequently, if they can't go back in at standards, then they should have been removed. Was basically a summary of the discussions that were had.
Right. Well, it's you learn something every day, Rick. So again, we're responsible for policy and budgets and process, but Lewis is at the sharp end of delivering all our cycling and active travel and public transport. He's even in charge of bus stops. Who knew? But there are people that do that, and it is unfortunate. I mean, another example would be in the disability arena. When what is acceptable in terms of, but it's not acceptable, is access sometimes. But when you make a change to something, you then have to make it compliant. So it happens in all walks of life that where things are upgraded or changed, it then has to conform to the latest legislation. And disability is one of the common things that a lot of people get caught out with, whether it's shops or nightclubs or bars or whatever it is, and it is unfortunate. But look, if things can be improved, Lewis is the man to improve them. And we are getting money from government to try and do all we can. And there are some major schemes that will take longer in terms of to deliver because they're reliant on a number of other factors in terms of redevelopment of a whole area, how we integrate traffic and cyclists in terms of keeping them segregated, but still integrated in terms of forms of transport on the road network. So we can only do what we can do, and it is frustrating. Daily I'm frustrated by the lack of progress on certain things, but I just wanted again to reiterate, we are committed to active travel in Peterborough, and we do want to keep people safe and encourage cycling because it's better, not just for the planet but for people's health. That's what we're all working towards. So I hope that gives you some comfort.
Yeah, thanks to both of you. Thanks to you and to Lewis as well for coming on tonight.
Again, Rick, stay on board if you like, if you're interested. I think we've only got one more question, is it, Amanda? I think tonight. So it's a pretty light agenda. I think maybe the Peterborough public spent all their time watching the budget meeting last night, which was somewhat of a traumatic experience that I don't necessarily want to repeat. Not too quickly anyway. So, but look, you are with me, Wayne Fitzgerald, leader of Peterborough City Council. This is Ask the Leader. It's our regular monthly session where members of the public can put questions to me and officers, and all you have to do to take part in that is just email the team. It's asktheleader@peterborough.gov.uk. So Amanda, we've had another question in, I believe, which is from Kevin Bliss. So do you want to read it out on his behalf?
I can, yeah. So the question is, every Friday when people use the mosque in or around Cromwell Road for prayers, etc., the parking is always an issue. People seem to park anywhere they like, even on double yellow lines, and also the cycle lane at the side of the road. So much so that you cannot get a buggy past when walking down Taverners Road and have to resort to actually walking on the road. This is an absolute nightmare, not only for pedestrians, but for others as well. Are you able to get some patrols in this area, especially around this time, or able to do something about this problem?
Well, thanks to Kevin for his question tonight. As I say, all questions about it. We take on board everything what the public think, and so I asked the team to prepare a response, which I'll read and add any comments as necessary. So, of course, I and the team understand the frustrations that you have, Kevin, and we take seriously any concerns around parking and highways issues when residents raise them. We take them extremely seriously. Now, this issue is one that the team are aware of, and they'll look to see if they can find or improve the solution that suits all parties. Now, the mosques are very busy across the city, and we know that people who use the mosques at these times are usually parked for short periods for prayer normally. But if parking regulations are being breached, and this is causing an issue for residents, then we will look to take action wherever this is possible. I think the team have forwarded the details of your information and shall we say insight to the Parking Enforcement Service with a request for additional patrols in the area during these times. But if you'd like to discuss anything in particular, Kevin, that'd be great. Contact me via email. What I would say is another question that often comes up, and I get criticized because people seem to think I'm a traffic warden or some kind of parking attendant. You know, I'm not. We have 14, I believe, parking attendants across the whole of the city. Now, if you can imagine, 14 isn't a lot, and you would think they would be self-financing, because that's the question I always ask of the team. Well, why don't we just get more and issue more tickets to pay for them? It sounds an easy thing, but apparently it's not, because of training and all sorts of things. But I released some time ago that we were bidding or applying for new powers that would allow us to use CCTV and other methods that can only be used in London at the moment. And I'm trying to redirect parking attendants from having to patrol car parks by the use of technology. And we're looking to introduce that when we can, which will free up individuals to do more on-street patrols where hotspots occur. But with only 14 people, they can't be everywhere at once. I mean, I often get criticized about city centre parking, and you know, I'm often there first wagging my finger at people, telling them not to do so, risking a punch on the chin. But I do it, you know, because I know they shouldn't be there, and the parking attendant may not be there. But you know, we issue a lot of tickets across the city every year. A significant number of tickets are issued by the city council. I'd like to do more, but it comes back to resource and the number of people, and also they can't be everywhere at once. But your concerns have been noted, and I think the team will be looking to step up patrols in a particular area. It's the same around schools. We have similar complaints. So that, but if we don't gather the intelligence, and that comes from people like you, Kevin, then there's not a lot we can do, because we have a sparse resource. But in this particular case, if it doesn't improve, by all means email the team again, and we'll maybe kick a few bottoms if they haven't been doing it, because people should get the message and they should be considerate about how and where they park, particularly, you know, if you're parents with kids and buggies, it's no fun, and we've all been there, no doubt. So I think that is it for this session. There's another chance to have your say on the 29th of March as we move into the next session. This one's a little bit late because I had a holiday. I think I may have mentioned it earlier. So get in touch. Just email asktheleader@peterborough.gov.uk and get your questions to me and the team, and we'll do our very best to answer them, whatever they may be. We're not afraid we're going to shirk anything. But that's it for now. So until the next time, I'll bid you farewell, and thanks to Rick, thanks to David Turnock, to Emma G, to Amanda, and Lewis Banks tonight. Thank you very much.